All right, we are in section 10.4 where we are going to find the area and circumference of circles. So, one of the things that we gotta kind of identify is some of the terms that um, are characteristic with a circle. The first one we have up there, it says circumference. Circumference is, it says it's the distance around a circle. So one of the ways that you can kind of identify with what the circumference actually is with respect to something else is it's another way of saying it's like the perimeter. So you have the perimeter of like rectangles, you have perimeters of triangles, you have perimeters of other types of polygons. In this case, because of the curvature of a circle, they call it something else, so they call it the circumference. Some of the things that we have to be able to identify when it comes to a circle. First off, we have to be able to identify the center of a circle. So the center is directly in the middle of the circle. And the reason why that's important because it is going to be uh, utilized with the different terms we have here where we got diameter and we got radius. Both of those terms, for instance, a diameter, it says it's the distance from one side of a circle through the center to the other. So you have essentially a line segment that goes from one end of the circle to the other, but one of the characteristics of the diameter is it must go through the center point. If it doesn't, it's called something else. Uh, the other term that involves the center of a circle is the radius. All right, it says that the distance from the center of a circle to the outside of the circle. So I find my center point right here, and I find an endpoint that is on the circle. That is my radius. Another important note, the radius is always half the size of the diameter. So if you know what the radius is, you can figure out the diameter by doubling the radius. If you have a diameter, you can figure out the radius is by cutting it in half. So you don't need to know both items in order for you to solve a problem. You just need to know one of them and then kind of figure it out from there. Okay. So we have essentially two circumference formulas. Two circumference formulas, it's usually depicted on what information is given to you. If you are given the diameter, you're going to use this formula. Circumference is going to equal pi multiplied by the diameter. If you are given the radius, you are then going to use this formula. The circumference would be 2 times pi times r. Makes sense? Uh, you need to double up on the radius because these two formulas are the same and you'll get the same result whether you use one or the other. One of the more important things that um, we're going to look at is they're going to be sometimes they're going to ask you if they want an approximation. If they are asking for an approximation of the circumference, we are going to represent pi, this symbol right here, pi, with either the number 3.14 or the fraction 22 over 7. All right, those are two of the best approximating numbers to represent pi. So you can use either one of those two. 3.14 is probably the most common approximated number, but sometimes they will ask you for one or the other, depending on the directions. One of the things that you will have to keep in mind is if they want an exact answer. If they want an exact answer, the symbol pi will be part of the answer. Okay, so let's take a look at some examples. So right here, they gave us the diameter. Okay, we know because from one endpoint to the other, they're telling us that it's 14 feet. So they're telling us the diameter is 14. We want to find the circumference. They're looking for approximation because they're asking you to use 3.14 to represent pi. So since it's circumference, they gave you the diameter. We're going to use pi times d. So the circumference here is going to be 3.14 because that's going to represent pi, and it's going to be multiplied by d, which is 14. So we just go 3.14 times it by 14, and that's going to equal a circumference of about 43.96, and it's just going to be feet. We look over here, we have a circle with a radius of 35 millimeters. So since we are given the radius, we are going to use the formula C equals 2 pi r. So now I got C equals 2 times it by 3.14 because that's going to represent pi, and the radius is 35. All right, we have all multiplication here, so 2 times 3.14 times it by 35 is going to give me a result in circumference of 219.8, and it was in millimeters. Okay, so if we look here, we have a situation where they gave us the circumference of the circle. They're telling us the circumference of the circle is 70 inches. They want us to find the radius of the circle, and they're asking us to round that radius to the nearest inch. So since we're trying to find radius, let's use the circumference formula where radius is involved. So they told us that the circumference is 70. So I'm going to write in 70 here to represent the circumference. And then I got 2. And now I'm going to write in 3.14 as my value of pi. And I still don't know what the radius is. So 2 times 3.14 is going to give me 6.28. So now I have 70 is equal to 6.28, and that gets multiplied by r. To find what r is, I simply divide 6.28 to both sides. So I do that, I get the value of r, which is equal to 11.14 inches, but they asked us to round to the nearest inch. That means that this radius rounded to the nearest inch would be 11 inches. All right, so now going into area, the area of a circle is, there's only one formula, and that is with respect to the radius. So it is pi r squared. So what we have to take into account is if we are given a diameter, we must change it to a radius. Because the only formula we have is with respect to the radius. So, and same thing goes, we can use 3.14 or 22/7 to represent pi when we're looking for our approximation. Okay, so we have the first circle here where we are given a radius, so that's great. So we don't have to make any changes. So area equals pi r squared. So we can say that this area here is going to be equal to 3.14 because they asked us to use that to approximate pi. And since they give us a radius of 15, this is going to be 15 squared. Order of operations says we must take care of the exponent there. So 15 squared is 225. So this area is going to equal 3.14 times it by 225. 3.14 times 225 is an area of 706.5, and this is where we write in the square inches we talked about. Uh, labeling that correctly with respect to area. That's where we have to put in the square units. In this case, it was inches, so it was square inches. Over here, we are given a diameter. Since the diameter is not part of the formula, we have to convert it to a radius. So since the diameter is 50, we know that the radius is half of the diameter. So we just simply divide it by 2. So we have 25 yards. So now I go here. All right, I got area is again pi r squared. Area equals 3.14. And now I have 25 squared. Let's take care of the exponents. So this area is 3.14 times it by 25 squared, which is 625. Multiplying 625 by 3.14, I get an area of 1,962.5, and this is square yards. So now in this situation here, they say they gave us the area. This should be um, 72 square millimeters, and they want us to find the radius and they want us to find the diameter. So go here, area equals pi r squared. We know that a is 72. We know that we can put pi is 3.14, and we have the r squared there. In order to solve this, we have to first divide everything by the approximation of pi. In this case, it's 3.14. So 72 divided by 3.14 is, I get r squared, and I'm going to round this to 2 decimal places. So this is 22.93. All right. Now, to figure out what r is, I got to take the square root of both sides. So now r is going to be the square root of 22.93. And we get a result of about 4.79 millimeters for the radius. And to find the diameter, I must take 4.79 times it by 2, and I get a value of 9.58 millimeters for the diameter because it's twice the radius. Last thing is here they want us to find the area of the shade region. So in this case, it's kind of that, that cyan color in the notes. So here's how we go about finding it. The first thing is they want us to find the area of the largest circle. So you got the center point here, go into here. We know we have a radius of 9 inches. So area is pi r squared. So now I get area equals 3.14 times it by 9 squared. So 9 squared is 81. So now I got 3.14 times it by 81. 81 times by 3.14 gives me 254.5 0.34. So that's what it is for the entire circle, whether it was shaded or whether it was the smaller white circle that was in the middle. All right, so now we have that area. Now that has to be subtracted by the non-shaded circle. So again, this is pi r squared, and this is going to be area equals 3.14, and the radius of this non-shaded area is 4 inches, so it's going to be multiplied by 4 squared. So now I have 3.14, got to multiply by 4 squared. 4 squared is 16, and then 16 times 3.14 gives me a value of 50.24. So to figure out what the value of the shaded region, I take the 254.34, which is the area of the entire object, subtracted by the non-shaded region, which is 50.24, and I get a result of 204.1 square inches for my shaded region. And that is being able to find circumference and area of a circle. Hope this helps. Till next time.